Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. Ken Moore back in the house. First time since the devastating loss to the Baltimore Ravens in the playoff game a couple of months ago. Taking a couple of months off from YouTube, had some other things going on. Was able to get some football broadcasts with ESPN this spring, so my time's been a little consumed. But I've been able to hop in on a few shows with my boys, Titan Upload and Titans in Truth and Mr. Titan, and talk some things over with those guys during the off season. But as you know, the big news today, Jadeveon Clowney, his one season in Nashville is done. We talked about it about 3 weeks ago on Twitter and on Instagram and on a couple of those guys' shows. I mentioned that it was highly unlikely that Clowney would be returning to the Titans this season. That came to fruition today as he signed a 1-year deal with the Cleveland Browns. So we will unpack that. We will talk about what it means for the Titans, what it means for the Browns, what it means for Clowney, and then also the financial implications on the salary cap. More importantly, the roster availability at the edge position now for the Titans. What does their depth chart look like? We'll talk about that tonight. And then, of course, most importantly, interacting with you guys, finding out what you like, what you think, because I know many of you guys in Titans Nation were really happy to see Clowney go. Some of you were a little disappointed to see him go. So we'll get you guys' comments on what you think about everything that went down today with Clowney and with the Browns and with the Titans. And oh, by the way, Clowney had some interesting comments. Did he take a shot at the Titans on the way out the door? So we'll talk about that as well. A few of you joined early. Let's get some of these comments in here before we get started. Clowney Super Bowl first in said it won't be the same without Clowney. He was his favorite Titan. He was the key piece to Vrabel's defense. He wished we could have kept him. And you know, at first I really did want Clowney back. But on the information that I was able to gather, the information that I was able to heed, it was really roster availability that the Titans did not want to impact themselves with and limit themselves to. There's only so many spots on the football team. We know the Titans, they really only ran 3 or 4 guys at defensive end last year. So when you have Harold Landry and Bud Dupree, you only have space for really 2 more guys at that outside linebacker position. And you don't want to have two injury prone guys. Now, we don't want to label Bud Dupree as injury prone just yet. He's had one significant injury and he's still coming off that injury. And we don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. But you don't want to compound that by adding another guy or bringing back Jadeveon Clowney because he has those injury issues as well. So we'll talk about that. But before we get too deep, I need you guys to do me one favor. If you're new to the show, which I know some of you are, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit the like button. Please hit that notification bell because as we get deeper into the off season, into the summer, I will have more shows coming up, especially when there's breaking news on the Titans. You can also follow me on Twitter at Kmore Sports. And then you guys can also follow me on Instagram at Kenmore Sports. So those are your outlets where you can get all of my content and all of my information. So now back to the show itself and talking about Clowney. A couple of reasons why this did not work out for the Titans. Tennessee paid Clowney $13 million guaranteed last year. What some people don't know is that he also had another $2 million in incentives that he did not reach. He had a $1 million incentive if he got 10 sacks, which obviously he didn't get any. He also had another $1 million roster bonus or team bonus if he played at least 75% of the snaps and made the Pro Bowl. So obviously he did not meet any of those incentives. We don't know what the incentives are with Cleveland. We know it's a 1-year, $10 million deal. We don't know if there are incentives on top of the $10 million, or maybe it's a $7 million deal with $3 million in incentives. We don't know that information yet, though. That should come out probably in the coming days. What the Titans were not going to do is tie up significant money in Clowney once again, and neither should they have. You have a lot more defensive holes that you need to fill, and you need to fill those positions with young, healthy bodies. Now, Clowney, still young. He's only 28 years old. But he's playing in probably what feels like a 32 to 33-year-old body with the amount of injuries that he's dealt with. There were some comments today where if Cleveland paid him $10 million, why couldn't we pay him $10 million? Well, the same reason we didn't want to give Logan Ryan $10 million a year ago. Now, as you guys know, I'm a big Logan Ryan fan. I thought Logan Ryan earned his money last year. Clowney didn't earn his money last year, not because of effort, because he gave 100% effort when he was on the field. He played hurt. A lot of people don't know he played hurt. Probably the last 2 or 3 games that he played, he was significantly injured. And then eventually they just had to shut him down after that. So it wasn't from a lack of effort with Clowney. It was just because he could not stay on the field. And that's the risk that you take when you bring a Clowney in. You have to think about Cleveland and Tennessee in similar situations. Cleveland is in a similar situation this year that Tennessee was in 2020. They think they're one player away from a Super Bowl. The Titans got all the way to the AFC Championship game. Thought they were one player away, 2 players away. So they go get Vic Beasley, they go get Jadeveon Clowney. Obviously, we know Beasley, he was the defensive version of Isaiah Wilson, and Clowney just didn't work out. So Cleveland's really willing to take that gamble this year on Clowney. They're willing to take that risk and see if he can be the other side to Myles Garrett and put them over the hump. My boy, Mr. Titan in the house. Welcome back. Yes, sir. I'm glad to be back, man. It's been a long time. It's been a couple of months. Seems like it's been longer than that. Being able to talk to you guys. So glad to have all you guys back in the house. Ryan, what's up, bro? Glad to have you in the house here tonight. And Ryan also had a comment, the lack of an offseason hurt Clowney and the Titans last year. Absolutely. Absolutely. Not having Clowney in for training camp, having him get those reps, that did hurt. But he's a veteran. And Clowney's MO, at least prior to this season, he waited to the last minute before he signed with Seattle. He waited to the last minute before he signed with Tennessee. He could not take that chance this offseason. He's a year older. There's a lot of good defensive players in the draft. And the market was not as robust for Clowney this offseason as it was last offseason. Seattle wanted him back at a lower price, just like Tennessee wouldn't have minded having him back, but it would have had to have been at a significantly lower price. New Orleans made a late run at Clowney, if you remember last year. You remember all the false reports from several networks that Clowney had agreed to a deal with New Orleans, and I kept telling you guys it wasn't true. But this time around, there wasn't a lot of takers for Clowney. He was only playoff teams, really, that thought they were a player away were going to be interested in a Clowney, and that number is low. Cleveland was the one team that was really willing to go out on a limb and pay him, I would call, significant money. $10 million is still significant for a guy with 0 sacks. That's very significant. So they were willing to pay that. And there weren't a lot of other teams willing to do that. So that's the reason why Clowney is gone. The Titans did not want to take that risk with Bud Dupree already being a risk, a high investment risk. They want to get solid, young, productive players behind Dupree, behind Harold Landry, because Harold Landry is going to be demanding big money pretty soon, especially if he keeps playing 90 to 95% of the snaps. Tennessee Titans logic in the house. Clowney as DN2 behind Myles Garrett is pretty nice. Well, I think he's going to be on the other side of Garrett. I think they're going to be bookends. I don't think he's going to be coming off the bench. I think he's going to be a starter and a key rotation piece alongside Myles Garrett. So if Clowney can do for Cleveland what we hoped he would do for us last year, we already saw how Cleveland, they got into the playoffs last year. They won a game against Pittsburgh, and if they can play, if they can produce, they're going to be a very dangerous ball club. Now, let's talk a little bit about how free agency works with a guy like Jadeveon Clowney. Again, we talked about the Titans really not wanting to bring him back. And Clowney had an interesting statement today during his presser with the Browns media. Here was paraphrasing his quote. You guys, as in Cleveland, won 12 games, right? More than the team I played on last year. That's what Clowney had to say in his press conference today. Now, some will take that as a shot at the Titans, but you have to realize when guys are in these press conferences and they're talking to the local media, they want to build up that, hey, I really wanted to be a Cleveland Brown. Well, personally, I don't think Jadeveon really wanted to be a Cleveland Brown. I think Cleveland was one of the few playoff teams that offered him a nice contract. I think Jadeveon really wanted to stay in Tennessee. He really wanted to be back with the Titans. And when that doesn't happen, you feel a bit jaded. It's like your girlfriend doesn't want you back, so you get with the new one and you talk about the old one. And that's kind of what Clowney did here indirectly at the Titans. I think he still has a lot of respect. I think there's still mutual respect between him and Mike Vrabel. Vrabel is really fond of the guy, and I think he really, really wanted him back. But again, financially and where the team was, it really, really, really didn't make sense for that to happen. Mr. Titan, do you think the Browns got a good deal with Clowney? I think they paid too much. Again, I'm interested to see what the incentives are. I'm interested to see what the contract looks like. But it's worth the risk for them because the Browns feel like, hey, they lost to Kansas City last year. If they can get to Patrick Mahomes, if they can put pressure on them, they feel like they're one player away. The same way we did in 2019. We felt like we were one player away. We just got to get past Kansas City. We got to get past Patrick Mahomes. So Clowney is kind of like a hired gun now. He's the type of player that a team will take a chance on if they feel like they're one player away, they're one pass rusher away. He's a hired gun at a relatively good salary. So if the guarantees are not that high and they have a lot of incentives in that contract, then yeah, it could be a good deal for Cleveland. Ryan, play for banner. Again, I agree with you. I don't think he really meant anything by it. A lot of fans are upset on it on social media, but they already didn't like Clowney to begin with. So, of course, they're going to kick him out the door, and he probably shouldn't have said what he said because that can run some of your former teammates the wrong way. But at the end of the day, these guys know what it is, and it is what it is. My boy Upload in the house. No, Mr. Titan, $10 million. Come on, man. Again, if it's 10 million guaranteed, then yeah, that's too much. If it's 6 million guaranteed or 7 million guaranteed with 3 or 4 million in incentives, then it's a possibility. Logic, yeah, yeah. He will, yes, he will be DN2. Absolutely. He will be DN2. Yep. They act like Clowney's old. They think this will be his year. Same thing we thought last year with Vrabel. For Cleveland's sake, I hope not, because they're in our conference, right? So we hope that Clowney does not have the success. Me personally, I hope he has success. I hope he can play 16 games or 17 games as it is now, because I want to see him continue to flourish. And for those that don't know, Clowney's a good dude. He's a good guy, right? He's not a locker room problem. He's not a guy that comes in and doesn't give you effort. But you do have some guys that are just injury prone, and he's been like that his entire career. He's never lived up to being the number one pick in the draft. So with that is going to come um, criticism, and shrapnel is going to be thrown his way. But he's a good dude, so I really can't root against him. I don't root for him to fail, except when he plays the Titans. But for the other games, I hope that he does well. I hope that he does well. Um, I also wanted to talk a little bit about Clowney's production, because a lot of people just look at the sacks, right? Clowney didn't have any sacks, and they just look at the statistics. But you sometimes with guys like Clowney, you have to look deeper inside the numbers. And Clowney is, according to the NFL, ranked fifth in pass rush win rate. There are only 4 guys in the league that ranked higher than him in getting pressure on the quarterback. And those 4 guys were Robert Quinn, TJ Watt, who we know is great, Myles Garrett, and Aaron Donald. 4 elite guys. Those are the only ones higher than Clowney in pass rush win rate. But when you're injured, when you're playing hurt, you're going to be half a second late getting to the quarterback. How many times did we see Clowney almost get to the quarterback? We saw a couple of times he had passes right in his hands for interceptions, almost had the interception, just a half second late. But when you're playing hurt, you're going to be a half second late. You're going to be a foot short. And that's the hurdle that he could not get over with Tennessee. But he was great against the run. He gave tremendous effort, especially when you compare him to a guy like Vic Beasley. And it's just a shame that it did not work out for him here in Tennessee. But you know what? We got to figure out what's next for the Titans. So what is next for the Titans? Well, we have to figure it out. We've made some changes on defense. We've lost a lot of guys on defense. We're going to take a look at the defensive depth chart here, what the starters look like going into the season. What can we expect in the draft from these guys? And I still have a lot of concerns about what we're looking at defensively. Here's what we're looking at for the starters. So this is the Titans run mostly a nickel defense. They run the nickel defense probably about 60 to 70% of the time. So more time than not, you're going to have 5 cornerbacks with 2 linebackers, 2 inside linebackers, 2 outside linebackers, and 2 defensive ends. So our front 4 looks great right now with Dupree, Autry, Simmons, and Landry. That looks like a tremendous front 4. Your backers are back with Evans. Jayon Brown is back. If he can stay healthy, he should have a tremendous impact for the team again this season. But Jayon Brown, another guy that has missed the end of the last 2 seasons with injuries. He did not complete the season the last 2 years. So that's another linebacker that you have injury concerns about. Evans has just not been solid consistently. I think he's reached his ceiling. I hope he gets better, but I think Evans has reached his ceiling. So now you move to the secondary where you say, okay, you should be set with Amani Hooker and Kevin Byard as your safeties. Those guys have been around for a while. Those guys have had success. Those guys should be able to hold their own. But the cornerback position, man, that concerns me. You lose a Dory, who was pretty much not part of the team last year, except until the end. Malcolm Butler had, I think, his best season as a Titan, and he's gone. So these guys could fill in any three ways. You got Christian Fulton right now. I have him on the right side. I have Jack Rabbit Jenkins in the slot. And then on the left side, we signed Kevin Johnson. But I tell you what, guys, I said the same thing last year about Jonathan Joseph. I said if Jonathan Joseph was on the field to start the season as a starter, that was going to be a problem. I feel the same way about Kevin Johnson. That's why I didn't even put him on the depth chart. I'm hoping we draft a corner that can man the other side from Fulton or Jenkins. Those guys may flip-flop. Fulton may go in the slot. Jenkins may go to the outside. But if Kevin Johnson is our starting cornerback, those front four guys are really, really, really going to have to bring the heat against quarterbacks to make to bypass the problems that we have in the secondary. Donovan Romaine in the house. This was a difficult loss. Clowney is still disruptive. However, he lost containment way too much. He did lose containment a lot. But his job was to get to the pass rushers. And you have to realize when Clowney is going upfield, that means a linebacker, or if you're walking down a safety, has to man that position. So the Texans do that a lot with J.J. Watt. You'll see J.J. Watt fly upfield. He did that a lot in the Titans game at the end of the season. And then Derrick Henry would run right in front of him while he's running upfield to try to contain Tannehill. Titans run the same defense as the Texans. So you would see Clowney do the same thing, run upfield, and you'd see the running back run right in between him, but there has to be a linebacker there to fill that gap. Clowney Super Bowl, I don't know if J-Rob will want to keep Harold Landry long term. Man, J-Rob needs to start signing some of these guys long term. Harold Landry plays the most snaps. Harold Landry averages about 95% of the snaps every game. He may take one or two plays off a game, and that's about it. So they may want to sign up Harold Landry long term. I think Harold Landry is the real deal, and I think Harold Landry would be much more productive if he didn't play as many snaps. Titan Upload and I talked about this a lot during the season. If Harold Landry could reduce his snap count from about 95% to about 80%, I think you would see a much more productive player. Because when you're on the field that long for that many plays, you can't give maximum effort every single play. And especially when offensive coordinators are shifting their protection towards Harold Landry because they don't have to worry about anybody on the other side of the line of scrimmage. So they have to get some help for Landry. Titans logic, true DN, opposite. We'll see because he's going to have Bud Dupree on the other side. The question is, will Bud Dupree be ready for the beginning of the season? Will he be able to play 17 games? I doubt it. I doubt if he would be able to play 17 games. There's going to be a lot of guys this year that don't play 17 games. You may see NFL players, particularly those of high usage, they may have to start to develop NBA type mentality where you take a game off just for maintenance, just because your body's worn down, because there's still only one bye week and you add an extra game. Derrick Henry, I would be surprised to see Derrick Henry play 17 games this year. Derrick may only play 15 or 16 games, you know, if he stays healthy the entire season, just for maintenance, especially at the running back position, especially at the linebacker position, because those guys take the most punishment. The running backs, the linebackers, those are full on collisions almost every single play. The offense and defensive linemen get it as well, but linebackers, running backs, yeah, you may see those guys um, taking some maintenance days. Ryan says he's afraid that Landry has reached his ceiling too. I don't think so. I think I think Landry, like I talked about, if you can reduce his snap count, get him playing 75 to 80%, maybe 85% of the plays, let him have a little more energy once he gets into the fourth quarter. Let him have more energy the last month of the season because he hasn't been playing every single snap all year. I think you can see Harold Landry really take his game up to a Pro Bowl type level. I have a lot of faith in Harold Landry. He's probably going to be my next favorite player on the defensive side of the ball. And then, of course, you have guys like Derek Roberson and Brooks Reed and Wyatt Ray. Will those guys be able to come back? Will they be able to make the team? Will they be able to make an impact at the outside edge position? Or what will the Titans do in the draft to go along with that? To go along with Dupree? To go along with Landry? You're going to have at least two solid guys where you can have a nice rotation. And also bringing in Jim Swartz, kind of in a senior advisory role. We all know that Swartz, he runs that wide nine that he used to run when we had Vanden Bosch and Curse and those guys. So it's a completely different system than what he's used to coaching. But if he can still instill some of those same techniques in these outside linebackers, it could really enhance what the Titans are trying to do in 2021. We'll get a couple of more comments in here. We're not going to stay too long tonight. I just kind of wanted to get back into the mix, talk about this Clowney deal a little bit, kind of give you guys some insight as to why he's not back. He wanted to be back. He wanted to be back. It's not that the Titans didn't want him, but they didn't want him at the price that he wanted, that he could get from another team, albeit Cleveland this time. And again, they just didn't want to tie up another roster spot with a guy with an injury history with as many holes as the Titans have on defense. A few more comments. Let's see. Donovan was in. Harold played really well too when he had a complimentary pass rusher like Wake in 19. Also, Henry is a three-down player as well, like his motor. Yeah, he's a guy that stays on the field. You don't have to take him out on passing downs. He's a three-down guy, first, second, third down, absolutely. Philip Maddox in the house. Philip, welcome to the show, bro. Where you stand on the possibility Titans drafting an offensive tackle in the first or second round? Are you against the idea? Yes, I am. You went out and signed Kendall Lamb. You let Dennis Kelly go. So that tells me that you have confidence in Kendall Lamb to be your starting right tackle. There's too many other holes at the wide receiver position, at the cornerback position, at the edge rusher position, to try to go down and draft another offensive tackle in the first two rounds, in my opinion. I think we have two third round picks, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so I think you can go for an offensive tackle there if there's one there that you like. Or you go into the season with Kendall Lamb and Sambrelo, and you hope that Taylor Lewan is back 100% from his injury. and then you look at an offensive tackle possibly in the 2022 draft. But I think for 21, those first two rounds need to be wide receiver, cornerback, um, edge rusher to go along with, or you may even have to go inside linebacker if you're thinking you're not going to give that fifth year option to Rashad Evans. So you may have to have a linebacker in waiting for one of those guys. Tierre Tart will be a bigger presence this year too. Tierre Tart showed a lot of promise when he was able to get into the rotation. Hopefully, he will be a guy that can go in and fill the spot of Daquan Jones. Daquan Jones is likely not going to be returning as well. He was a big part of that defensive front next to Simmons. So if you're Jeffrey Simmons, you lose Jarrell Casey, who was your go-to buddy next door to you, and now you're going to lose Daquan Jones. Both of those guys were huge mentors to Jeffrey Simmons. So yeah, you got Autry, who's going to likely fill that spot of Daquan Jones, and hopefully Tierre Tart can be a competent backup to both of those guys. Who knows if Anthony McKinney will decide to play this year as he opted out last year? Yeah, we don't know. Don't have any news on McKinney at all. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. Do we think we'll pick up a tight end? Man, I hope so. I would love for us to find a way to trade up to get the kid from Florida, but I don't think that's going to happen. Hey, Delaney Walker said he wanted to come back to the NFL. You know, maybe he can talk to Vrabel, and would you guys like to see Delaney Walker maybe come back? I don't know what's going to happen at the tight end position. I think we're pretty set with Fursker right now as the starter. He's going to be our possession guy. And we'll have a show talking about the offense probably after the draft. That's when I'm planning my next show. Unless something breaks between now and then, we'll do our regularly scheduled Titans the day after the final day of the draft. We'll have our next scheduled show. But obviously, if something happens between now and then we'll talk about whatever that breaking news may be at that particular point. Do you think the Titans pick up a veteran, Kerrigan Casey, Snacks Harrison? We talked about Snacks Harrison last year, Titan Upload and the Titans never made that move last year, so I don't think they'll make it this year. One guy I would love to see them go after, who I think is visiting with Seattle, either visited with them today or is visiting with them tomorrow, is Aldon Smith, who had a great year with the Cowboys last season, and he's a free agent. Of course, he's had off the field problems in the past, so I don't know if the Titans would have any interest in that. But I would definitely love for them to bring in Aldon Smith and give him an opportunity to come in. Don't think Delaney and Vrabel got along well. Well, I mean, sometimes stuff happens, but hey, they're grown men, they're adults. You know, they can kiss and make up. And if it's better for the team, hopefully Vrabel will let that happen. I wouldn't mind seeing Delaney come back if he's healthy. He's had a year away from football to heal his body. So if he can come in even a training camp just to try to make the team, I think that would be a welcome opportunity for him and the Titans. So with that, let's see. Ryan Kerrigan, possibly. Might not be a bad move. Might not be a bad move there. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what shakes out. We'll see what shakes out with all of that. Matt, I said one more comment. Malik Hooker still on the market. Torn Achilles last year. Only 25. Again, you don't want to fill your roster spots with too many guys coming off injury. That's what got us in trouble last year. So I think the Titans are going to be very wary of bringing in guys with significant injuries. They did it with Bud Dupree, but Dupree's a special kind of player. I'm not sure you want to take that risk with a Malik Hooker. You can probably go get you um, another young guy that can fill that spot more so than that. See what Donovan's got. Evans moving to edge, played a lot there at Bama. He could be a rotation piece, but then the question becomes, who do you fill that inside linebacker position with, right? So you have to have a guy behind. Now you talk about David Long. David Long is a nice rotation guy. I'm not sure David Long is a guy you want playing there 80% of the time over a 17 game season. So I think and then you have to wonder about Rashawn as well. He's been playing at that position for 3 years now, inside linebacker. It would be a drastic change for him going into a contract year to change positions. So you have to get buy-in from the player, and then you have to have a competent backup to fill his spot to do that. So a lot of moving parts if you talk about moving Evans from the inside to the outside. Don't need Hooker. Got Cruikshank backing up too. Yep, absolutely. Cruikshank is there. He's been a solid backup for us as well at that safety position. You hope Kevin Byard could have a big year. You hope he can have a big bounce back year. I saw he had a clap back at someone on Twitter talking about if last year was a down year and he led the league in tackles, then he's going to have a long career. So I think he will have a long career. I think he has a lot of fight, a lot of spunk, and I expect Kevin Byard to have a tremendous year coming up. So again, I want to thank you guys for joining in. It's good to be back in the Titans community, and thank you guys for sticking with me on the Clowney News over the past year. It's been fun being a part of that, being the first guy to kind of get the intel that he was coming to Tennessee last year, and then one of the first to find out that he probably would not be returning this year. So I want to thank you guys for chiming in. Again, the next scheduled show will be the day after the draft is complete, not the day after the first round, but that Monday after the draft is complete. Again, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next show. Y'all have a good night. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. As my boy Upload would say, tighten up that like button on the way out the door, and we'll see you guys on the next show. Y'all have a good night.